Type on Parade, and that's the theme for this video. We're going to go through some more elaborate features in the text layer that allow us to bring a bit more dynamic animation to our typography. So in comp number 4, it's called Crazy Type. We have a layer of text, Type on Parade. And as we know, we can open up the text attribute, and we see that there's some options there for us. We've played around with the path and so on. But we've been ignoring this column here that has the word animate and then a little button next to it. And if you hit the button, it opens up all of the attributes that we can add to this type layer. So the normal property values that you recognize from just animating layers: anchor point, position, scale, skew is a new one, rotation, opacity, and then you can do all of them. We can animate fill color, the stroke width. We can animate the tracking, a line anchor, line spacing, character offset value, character value, and the blur. Do I really need to read all of those for you? I'm pretty sure you could have read them, but you know they're there. I may as well just pass over them. Let's take the most simple approach first and just deal with position. When you choose to add an animator, and you can see now there's a new attribute in the layer here called animator1. This gives us a range selector and then the attribute that we specified. In this case, it's position. Position has an X and a Y value. So if I were to grab and drag my X, you'll see the characters shift from left to right. And if I do the Y, it'll go up or down. So if I take a positive value to my Y and I just lower it, you see that the text goes down in the composition. If I were to animate that, it's really not that exciting. The text just goes up and down. May as well just animate the layer itself. But if we want to get a little more specific, we can open up the range selector. And if you think about the range selector, what it means is the range of characters that you have on that layer. There's a start and an end. It starts at 0, the end is at 100. So if you were to change those, you see that you have the ability to animate the letters in a sequence, front to back or back to front. You can also change the offset. Okay, and that's basically like doing the start and end together. So what if you wanted text to like fly on screen, like pop up from the bottom? I would have to make all of my characters disappear and then animate the start range, maybe over 2 seconds, maybe 1 second. I will have my start range go from 0 to 100. I've got motion blur on this comp, so you'll see that the letters are nice and blurred. So that's a pretty unique way to start thinking about how you can deliver text onto your design. Fly in, instead of it being one single line that just moves in, you can make it a bit more interesting by dealing with each character. So that's pretty fun. You have to make the noises, as always. What does a letter sound like as it flies onto your screen? Make up that sound. It makes animating even more fun. So that is a real simple solution using these properties. I'm going to bring them back up a bit here so we can talk about some other things. I'm going to take away those keyframes by clicking on the stopwatch. There is an advanced field there as well where we can say we'd like our movement to be based on characters, which is the default, or we could get into words. So now, come here, you. Things will fly on or move according to each word. And it understands words being separated by spaces, basically. So that's kind of cool. And then you can get into what's, how much, and what's the smoothness, and are we easing, and so on. And you should definitely play with these different attributes and see what happens. If you turn randomize order on, now the text no longer moves according to its position, from left to right. It's going to be random, which is kind of cool. And if you don't like the random that you get, you just change the random seed, and it'll fluctuate that order, and you'll now have something that happens in random. Wow, I just about spaced out there. Okay, so I'm just going to close up the range selector here, and I want to look at animator 1. Follow that field across to the right, and you'll see that there's another little word, add, and another button. So in animator 1, I can add another property to animate, and this time maybe I'll just do rotation. So a rotation value comes up underneath animator 1. I can change the rotation of those letters, right? And what am I looking for? Now, if I were to animate, you'll see that they rotate and move into position. So you're having control over two different properties with one animator. If you go to that add button, you'll notice there's another thing called a selector. And the selector has range, wiggly, or expression. I'm just going to talk about the wiggly for now, because the wiggly is so awesome, and usually the students kind of freak out at this point. When you add a wiggly to an animator, it's basically kind of automating the animation and producing the change in the properties that you've assigned, in this case position and rotation, automatically and constantly. So now you can see I haven't laid down any keyframes, but I've added this wiggly, and the wiggly is taking over the movement and rotation in a random sort of order. If I open up the wiggly selector, you have some options about what the mode is like, how far do you want the wiggly to go, and the maximum or minimum values. Is it based on characters? Again, is it words that it's doing? So now I have it broken down into words, which is, perhaps a little bit easier on the eyes to read and something like this. And it's very playful, obviously. You have how many wiggles per second you would like this to happen. So if it seems too fast, you could slow it down. Or if you want something just crazy, like because you're doing something about like coffee, maybe it's like a caffeine commercial, then you can speed up that wiggles per second, and you end up having something that's looking like this. It's pretty intense. Come on, there we go. Definitely, definitely something you'd see for like 5-hour energy. You can drive for hours without falling asleep. Or we'll slow it down. We'll go to like 1 per second, and then it's much easier and mellow. Oh, it's so nice. It's like type on a trampoline. So you should play with the wiggly values and see what kind of effects it has on your text. So at this point I'm still in animator 1, and I can just keep adding other properties. I can say, well, let's go animate fill color, and I'll just choose RGB. It's going to pick, I put that wiggly back to characters. That way we can see what it's really doing. So my wiggly's back to characters, and now I have fill color animated, and it's also varying over time. So the wiggly is affecting the color value based on this first value of red, but you could change this. It's not really going to make that big of a difference. It does influence things slightly. You can see it get warmer or cooler. I'll stay warm. Okay, so that value of color is being wiggled just like the position and rotation. So now I've got really happy, bouncy text. Type on parade. They're marching. And of course, these values of position and rotation really have a big influence on how much movement we get. If that seems like too much, then I would just lower the value of my y. Maybe something nice and subtle. I could maybe increase my rotation and see what happens. So now, instead of the text bouncing so much, it's more rocking back and forth. Or I could just change that y value to 0. So there is no movement currently, and it's just the letters rocking around, which is fun too. And they're changing color. Look at all that fun stuff we can do with our text. So that's all under Animator 1. But what if you want a property that changes on its own independently from what's happening to these different attributes? You need to select your text layer. Make sure that Animator is not selected. Select your text layer and go to the Animate and add another one. Like maybe I'll do opacity. So now I'll take Animator 1. I'm going to rename it. I'm going to do position, rotation, RGB. That way I know what's being affected in that animator. In this one, I'm going to go with opacity. So my opacity, I'm going to change to 0. And I'll go to frame 0. I'm going to open up my range selector. And I'm going to animate the start so that over 1 second, the type comes on screen. I would like to go to advanced and turn on randomize order. And now the text comes on all by itself, and while it's fading in, the other text is doing its thing. So I was able to control opacity all on its own because it was its own animator, which I could then add its own wiggly to or something like that. But in this case, I'm just controlling its start point in a random order. So this is really kind of a very unique way to make our words come alive. It doesn't have to stop here. You can start combining our other methods. So I could get my pen tool and make like an arc and say that I would like this text to be on that path. And it's still going to do the same stuff. It's going to rotate and wiggle in its color and fade in. But I've oriented it along an arc instead of just being on a straight line. And that path can be animated. The mask can move. You can change the offset of its margin. It's really kind of fun, and it just will. This goes on and on. You can have so many different combinations and variations of our type. I'm going to move that mask out of there for now and just bring it back. Well, how do you get rid of these things? You just go select the animator and delete it. So I just deleted them. I'm back to normal text because I want to show you that there's a whole bunch of presets under Effects and Presets palette. If you don't see that, you can go to Window and pull up your Effects and Presets. Okay, so here I have No, it's going to be under this one. That's right. Okay. Animation presets, backgrounds, blah, 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 images. This is all really cool stuff you should check out, but I'm going to text right now. So if I open up text, I have 3D text, which we won't get into at this moment, but Animate In is a whole folder full of presets. So let's do like fly in from bottom. You just grab that, drop it on your layer, and check it out. It automatically brought that combination of position. Well, I guess it's not any combination, it's just position. But it put in an animator with the position. It offset it based on my comp's dimensions to a value that you could tweak, push it even further off if you wanted to. But that's all that was. It just did the work for you. Am I a fan of having computers do the work for you? Not really. I'm more a fan of you learning how it works and then taking advantage of and tweaking and modifying these presets. These are great. These are a great starting point, but you can't just leave them. I'm going to take reining in characters and watch what happens. Look at that. It's really, I'll turn motion blur off. That'll help. All right. So check this out. That's really cool. It's very cool. And what's really happening here? We should take a look. We'll open up Animator 1, and you'll see that position and opacity, character alignment, character range, and character offset are all being used in this preset. So character offset is why all of these letters are changing over time. If I were to increase that, you'll see that it's going through a bunch of different characters. So if you were to play with this stuff and modify it, then you start to own it. And you also start to understand what's going on. So this is only happening because there's a keyframe in range selector of offset, and it's happening for 2.5 seconds. And if I need it to happen faster, I would just take that last keyframe and say I want it done in 1 second. So so if there's a few things wrong, I wouldn't want to see any of this information, so I'd probably try to get it higher up. I don't know why I'm seeing so much text. Full Unicode. It's left to right. My opacity is set to 0. Strange. I don't know why I'm seeing that opacity. Is it an effect? Echo. Yep, so it also came with an effect. That's what's going on. So this effect is an echo effect from our effects menu. That's what it would look like if it didn't have echo on it. So as soon as that echo effect is added, that's where I see. All right. But anyways, that's what it takes. You got to open them up. You got to dig around and say, all right, what did they do to me here? And be in control of your own work. So that's just a folder of animating in. There's animating out. There are blurs. Why don't I get rid of that animator and the effect? There are blurs, curves and spins, graphical things to do, mechanical things to do. Really kind of fun. Totally. Lights and optical. This is cool. There's one that looks like fluorescent light. Look at that. That's cool. So it kind of looks like my text is flickering like a fluorescent light bulb would. It's pretty nice treatment. And how did they do it? I go and look at Animator 1. They're just doing opacity with some keyframing and offset, and there's a wiggly on it. So that makes sense to me. So I suggest you dig around these presets for text and see if anything starts to spark interest for your typography piece. Don't forget, you can't break it. So experiment all you can.